So hi there and welcome to another episode of Ass-Kicking Athletes of Antiquity with me, your non-animated host for this week, Karl Smallwood. And today we're talking about Robert Cadman, the Icarus of the rope. Robert Cadman may not be a name a lot of people watching this are familiar with, but in some parts of the UK today, he's considered a minor folk hero, famous for his many death-defying exploits as a flying man. Virtually nothing is known about Cadman's life prior to 1730, at which point he appears in records in Ireland, billing himself as the Icarus of the rope. Prior to this, the only real concrete bit of information we have about Cadman's early life is that he was born sometime in 1711 in a small English town of Shropshire. That's it. And you're about to find out why no one knows anything about him after 1730 when I tell you what he did as a flying man. And I should probably explain first what a flying man is, because upon hearing the term flying man, I'm guessing a lot of people are thinking, the fuck is a flying man? So a flying man was the collective noun used to describe a group of daredevils that emerged around the 18th century in the UK, known for their many death-defying exploits, usually revolving around being quite high up in the air. And I think it's fair to describe Robert Cadman as one of the most daredevilly daredevils of his era, in part because his act involved him literally catching on fire. But before we get to that, we have to explain what his act involved, and in a nutshell, Cadman would slide down a rope, which doesn't sound all that impressive, so I should clarify that the rope was hundreds of feet in the air, and Cadman had no safety equipment whatsoever, save for a small wooden board. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself because I should first explain how Cadman went about performing his act in the first place, because in the 18th century, there weren't all too many tall buildings in the UK, and near enough every tall building was a church, and churches don't generally like people climbing onto their roofs, and they especially didn't like people doing this in the 18th century. So Cadman had to hustle a little bit when it came to getting permission to do this. And what he would normally do upon entering a new town where he hoped to ply his trade as a flying man would be to approach the priest in charge of the local church and make them a simple offer.
Father, take off!
I will climb to the roof of your church and repair its steeple. And in return, you look the other way when I attach a rope to it, throw the other end to the ground, and then slide down it like a jackass. Shake it, More often than not, the priest would agree to this deal, and Cadman would dutifully climb to the roof of the church with a hammer in his hand, and then he would proceed to bang away at the steeple until the priest looked satisfied. And that's not comedic hyperbole, by the way, because Cadman will reportedly get to the roof of many of the churches he made this deal with and find that it didn't need to be repaired. However, he was worried that if he didn't look like he was repairing it, the priest would get annoyed, so he would take to just hitting it with a hammer until everyone looked satisfied that repair work had been done. After the repairs had been made, Cadman would then begin working up the invariably gathered crowd who were there to see what the fuck was going on. After getting the crowd all amped up with a variety of acrobatic moves like backflips and cartwheels, which remember were being performed several hundred feet in the air without safety equipment, Cadman would perform the pièce de résistance by lying down upon the rope and sliding down it face first. At which point he will pull two pistols from his jacket and begin wildly firing them into the air as his arsehole caught on fire. Upon reaching the ground, Cadman would stand up, no worse for wear, and pass his hat to the crowd, at which point they would shove handfuls of money into it because, come on, who wouldn't want to pay to see that? I paid to see that and I've got Netflix. And eagle-eared viewers will recall that I mentioned the only piece of safety equipment Cadman had, unless I cut that bit out, was a small wooden board, and that's the trick to how he would avoid having his dick melted off by the friction of the rope. And Cadman would hide this small wooden board, which had a groove cut into it, in his jacket as he climbed up to the roof, and then would remove it when he was far enough away where no one on the ground could see what he was doing. After riling up the crowd with his acrobatic antics, Cadman would then position the board on the rope and balance himself upon it, and slide down. At which point the sheer friction caused by the wood scraping against the rope would cause it to catch on fire, giving the appearance that Cadman, or at least his arsehole, was also on fire.
Whoa! Check it out! Mad Dog's on fire!
Stop, drop, and roll, man!
Ha ha ha! That's for Clyde's, baby. A little fire can't hurt you.
And I think it speaks to the confidence Cadman had in his own abilities, that rather than holding on to that small piece of wood like a fat kid does a boogie board in an undercurrent, he removed two pistols from his pocket and Dante'd his way to the ground. Which means Cadman may very well be the first and only person in human history to do a rainstorm. And while admittedly flying down a rope with flames shooting out of your arsehole, like Ghost Rider at a water park, is very impressive, it's worth noting that Cadman was an accomplished acrobat, capable of doing things like suspending himself in midair from the rope by his toes, at which point he would just do one of those crazy Batman sit-ups and reposition himself back on the ledge, or just walk along the rope, which remember was going downhill. And sometimes when he couldn't be asked, Cadman would simply sit on the rope and talk to the crowd gathered below. As you can imagine, these literal death-defying antics soon saw Cadman become a wealthy and famous man. And like all famous people, rumours soon started circulating that he died. And this being the days before the internet, Cadman couldn't exactly send out a tweet saying, "Hey guys, still alive, still rope sliding? Come join me at my performance next week in Pontefract Town Centre." So it's my theory that at least at one point during his life, Cadman had someone beaten to death thinking he was a zombie. There's no historical proof of that, but I'm going to imagine that it happened because, come on, Iron Maiden, free idea for an album cover. Flying, flaming zombie firing pistols. Don't even need to credit me. Just put it on an album. And while for much of his life the rumours of Cadman's untimely demise were greatly exaggerated, it was only so long he could tempt Sweet Lady Gravity 4, and he ultimately fell to his death during a performance in 1740. But here's the really sad part about Cadman's passing: he knew that something was wrong. So to explain, it was perilously important to Cadman's act that the line he slid on was pulled taut, but not too taut. And prior to what would be, unbeknownst to him, his final performance, Cadman noticed that his assistant had pulled the line too taut, and he shouted down to them to loosen it. However, the assistant did not understand what Cadman meant, and instead of slackening the line, pulled it even tighter. And it's like, at that point, why even have assistants? And while Cadman's life did come to an abrupt and ignominious end, I can only imagine the look on St. Peter's face when he flew through those pearly gates on fire, firing 2 pistols like a fucking badass. So if you enjoyed this video, thank you very much. The Ass Kicking Athletes of Antiquity series is something I've been working on for about 5 to 6 years now, and it's taken many forms during that time. It started life as a series of articles I wrote for an Audifont website, then it became a book manuscript that I had to put on the back burner when Fact Fiend started, and now it's this series of video. And I've been asked a few times if I would release that book, and in all honesty, I feel I've missed the window on people giving a fuck about books written by internet personalities who write listicles, and I feel the best avenue for this content is this video series, which you can help support by clicking on the link to the Patreon to the Untitled side channel below. If you're unable to support us monetarily, just like the video and watch it. I have fun making these and hopefully I have fun watching them. Cheers.